There is a hum beneath the noise of the world, a whisper that doesn't speak in syllables but in vibration, in resonance, in the unseen architecture of reality. Most never hear it. They move through life tuned only to what their five senses allow, unaware that the deepest transmissions are not heard, but felt, not spoken, but lived. Yet from time to time a crack appears in the ordinary, and through that subtle opening flows something ancient, something ineffable. Something that once glimpsed will not be forgotten. It is in this opening that we find the pulse of a mystery, long buried beneath the sands of time and dust of doctrine, the possibility that the very name of God, not as a word, but as a sound, a frequency, holds the power to alter the very blueprint of our being. This is not about religion in its familiar dogmatic dress. It is not about names passed down through translations or letters inscribed in sacred texts alone. It is about vibration as the language of creation. It is about the possibility that before the world was word, it was tone. And in that tone, encoded like a seed within the earth, was intention, identity, and infinite potential. The ancients seemed to know this. Their temples were not just stone structures, but resonant chambers. Their chants were not mere prayers, but tuning forks for the soul. To them, sound was not metaphorical. It was medicinal, alchemical, and transmutational. It was power. What if the ancient name of God, hidden in plain sight, scattered across cultures and epochs like fragments of a shattered mirror, was not a name, in the way we commonly understand it, but a key? Not a label, but a vibration so pure, so original, that to speak it, or even to feel it, is to remind every cell in your body of a truth. It forgot that you are not merely flesh wrapped around consciousness, but frequency wrapped around light. DNA, once thought to be fixed, inert. A static code is increasingly being understood as malleable, reactive, and responsive to environment and to sound. The implications are profound if DNA can be rewritten not just chemically but energetically. Then what happens when it is exposed to a divine frequency? What happens when you remember the name? The ancient mystics hinted at this in veiled language. The Hebrews had the tetragrammaton Yod-He-Vav-He, a name so sacred it was never spoken aloud, but rather breathed as though it were not a word, but a rhythm, the inhale and exhale of life itself. The Egyptians carved sonic glyphs into their monuments. The Vedic traditions revered the primordial sound, Aum, not merely as a mantra, but as the vibrating axis of the cosmos. These were not unrelated phenomena. They were distant echoes of the same song, a song now almost forgotten, drowned out by the noise of modernity. But lost does not mean gone. Forgotten does not mean erased. The frequency still exists, vibrating in the substructure of reality, waiting to be rediscovered not through intellect alone, but through inner alignment. For the name of God, as the ancients knew, is not something one simply says. It is something one becomes attuned to. It resonates not just in the ears, but in the marrow, and when heard correctly, not with the mind, but with the whole being, it begins to resonate with you. It sings you back into coherence. This journey is not merely theoretical. It is not poetic indulgence or spiritual escapism. It is biological. It is physical. It is intimate. For if we dare to entertain the notion that our bodies, these soft vessels of blood and breath, can be altered by intentional frequency, then we are forced to reimagine what it means to be human. No longer passive recipients of genetic inheritance, but conscious participants in an evolving symphony. The name, then, is a tuning pitch. And you, yes, you are the instrument. This exploration does not promise easy answers or formulaic truths. Rather, it invites you into a different kind of listening, a way of hearing, with the soul of seeing with inner sight. It asks not for belief, but for openness, not for doctrine, but for resonance. Along the way, we will travel through ancient traditions and emerging sciences, through allegory and anatomy, through the seen and the unseen. We will ask forbidden questions and entertain impossible possibilities. We will walk the edge where language ends and vibration begins. And perhaps somewhere along that path, a fragment of the name will begin to rise, not in your ears, but in your chest, in your bones, in your very DNA. And if that happens even briefly, then something irreversible will occur. You will not be changed exactly. You will be revealed. To venture deeper into this notion is to enter a space where the ancient and the modern begin to intertwine like twin strands of an awakening double helix, spiritual memory and scientific insight winding together in a dance that feels both foreign and profoundly familiar. At the heart of this inquiry lies a recognition that reality is not built from solid particles nor from rigid matter, but from frequencies, rhythms, and patterns so precise and harmonious that they give the illusion of form. You are not born of dust alone, but of resonance of waveforms translated into bone, sinew, and thought. And so the name of God, this frequency, this primal utterance before language, is not a symbol meant to be worshipped from afar. It is a living key meant to be remembered from within. The core concept is this divine frequency has the capacity to realign your internal structure down to the cellular level because your cells are listeners. Your DNA is not only an archive of inherited traits. It is also a receiver, an antenna tuned to vibrational inputs, awaiting instructions from the field in which it lives. Just as a musical note can shatter glass, or a mother's voice can soothe a child into calm, there are frequencies that do not merely affect the body, they reprogram it. Mystics have always known what science is only beginning to articulate, that sacred names, when spoken with awareness and deep presence, are more than vocalizations. They are invocations. They summon not a deity above, but a remembrance within. This is where the line between myth and mechanism begins to dissolve. For in the same way a tuning fork brings chaotic vibration into harmony, the sacred frequency, the name, brings the fragmented human soul into resonance with the divine order of existence. Many traditions point to the power of the Word. In the Gospel of John we are told, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Not the sentence, not the book, not the paragraph, but the word singular and potent. This isn't a literary flourish. It's a metaphysical principle. That original word, if it existed, would not have been spoken in any human tongue. It would have been sounded into being. It would have carried with it the frequency of creation itself. And if that frequency could be found, if it could be reattuned in the instrument of your being, then what might it awaken? The ancients saw the human body as a temple, not metaphorically, but acoustically. Temples were constructed with harmonic ratios designed to echo sacred sounds, to carry the voice upward into the dome like incense into the heavens. The belief was simple, yet profound, that by placing oneself in resonance with the divine tone, the human vessel could be purified, healed, and ultimately transformed. In essence, that the flesh could remember its origin not as clay, but as light condensed through sound. Modern science edges close to this mystery in its own lexicon. Studies in epigenetics reveal that genes are not destiny. They are blueprints subject to activation, suppression, or revision based on energetic inputs. Bruce Lipton and others have shown that perception, what we believe and what we feel, can shift genetic expression. But beyond perception is vibration, and beyond vibration is intention. It is here in the silence that precedes sound where the name resides. Another theme emerges as we consider the idea of hiddenness. Why would such a transformative truth be concealed? Why wouldn't the frequency of the divine name be widely known, taught, transmitted freely? The answer lies not in conspiracy, but in capacity. The name, if it is truly what the mystics suggest, cannot be imposed. It must be received. It cannot be memorized. It must be embodied. Like a sacred flame, it cannot be given to one whose vessel is not prepared to hold it. Thus, the name is hidden not from humanity, but for humanity until the individual is ready to perceive it not as an external truth, but as an inner sound. It may be whispered through ancient chants, echoed in forgotten syllables, or carried in the geometry of sacred symbols. But more than that, it lives in the spaces between your thoughts, in the stillness behind your breath, in the subtle music that plays between each heartbeat. To find it is not to gain something new, but to dissolve what obstructs your hearing of what has always been there. This is why the name changes you. Because in aligning with its frequency, you are not becoming someone else, you are becoming who you were before. Before the conditioning, before the identity, before the illusion of separation. You are restored to your original tone, your primal resonance. And that resonance undeniably eternally reaches all the way down to your DNA. For that is what your DNA truly is, a song written in flesh, waiting to be retuned to the harmony of the cosmos. There are some truths that are not explained, but instead unveiled, unfolded like ancient scrolls of light within the soul. To speak of the ancient name of God and its effect upon the human blueprint is not merely to trace syllables or recite chants, but to journey through symbols, stories, and metaphors that echo like voices in the corridors of timeless memory. To understand how the name transforms DNA is to step into a mythic landscape where language is not descriptive but creative, where sound becomes the brushstroke of the divine upon the canvas of flesh. Let us walk then through these symbolic pathways, not to define the mystery, but to let the mystery define us. The thread and the loom. Imagine, if you will, the human being as a tapestry woven upon an invisible loom. Each strand of DNA is a thread taut with potential coiled like sacred script. And the loom itself, the mechanism that spins, weaves, and binds, is operated by vibration. This is not just poetic. This is the living architecture of form. Frequency arranges matter. Sound gives shape to silence. And the thread cannot sing its true song unless the loom is calibrated to the frequency of its original design. The ancient name of God in this metaphor is not just the sound of a voice. It is the tuning of the loom itself. When uttered with reverence and embodied awareness, the name sends waves across the inner loom of being, realigning the weave, correcting the distortions, restoring the forgotten patterns. The tapestry becomes whole. The soul begins to remember. The cave of the self. In many traditions, the journey of awakening is depicted as the descent into a dark cave. The cave is not only a place of solitude, it is a return to the womb of the earth, to the silence before sound. It is in this stillness that the initiate hears the name not through the ears, but in the marrow of the bones, in the inner ear of the heart. The name is not spoken aloud. It emerges from within as if the very atoms of one's being are whispering it back to the mind. The mystery here is profound. The name is not introduced, it is remembered. It was always there, embedded in the original code. Like an ancient password encrypted in your soul, it awaits the moment of resonance to awaken. And when it does, the cave no longer feels like darkness, it glows with unseen light. A light that does not shine on the world, but from within it. The ladder of Jacob. In the book of Genesis, there is a vision given to the patriarch Jacob. He sees a ladder stretching from earth to heaven with angels ascending and descending upon it. Traditionally interpreted as a symbolic connection between the mortal and the divine, the ladder also resembles the double helix of DNA. Two intertwining paths spiraling upward, encoded with destiny, memory, and light. What if the ladder is not a distant structure but a mirror of what lives within us? What if Jacob's ladder is your own DNA, and the ascending angels are frequencies rising through your body as you awaken to the sound of the name? When the ancient name is intoned not merely by the lips but by the soul itself, those dormant sequences are activated. The ladder becomes alive and you begin to climb not away from life, but into its hidden dimension, into the divine code of your being. The name is fire and breath. In Exodus, when Moses encounters the burning bush and asks for the name of the divine, the reply is both cryptic and revelatory. I am that I am. This declaration is not just a label, it is an ontological ignition. It is fire expressed through breath. The Hebrew expression, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, contains sounds that resonate with breath itself, aspirated, spacious, almost unpronounceable. The divine name here becomes an act of being, a frequency of existence. To say the name is not to speak it, but to breathe it. And in doing so, one aligns with the pure awareness that precedes identity. This breath, when filled with sacred presence, becomes a flame that purifies the inner temple. And where fire meets DNA, transformation occurs not through destruction, but through illumination. The coiled scripts of the body are set alight with divine memory. You are no longer separate from the source, you are singing its name with every cell. The mirror of the waters. Ancient mystics believed that words spoken near still water were carried into the unseen realm. The water was a mirror, a recorder, a veil between worlds. Modern science confirms that water holds memory and responds to intention. Your body is mostly water. And when the divine frequency is introduced, your waters change. They shimmer with new patterns, ripple with new instructions. In this way, the name does not act upon you from outside. It emerges like a note, long held in silence. It rearranges your inner waters not by command, but by invitation. You are not forced, you resonate. And in resonance, you transform. These symbolic landscapes are not just poetic, they are maps. They remind you that transformation does not come from effort alone, but from alignment with something older than thought, more precise than language. The ancient name of God is not a superstition nor a relic. It is a vibrational truth that once heard within begins the great unfolding, the sacred return. And now we step down from the mountain, not away from the divine, but toward the integration of its whisper into the rhythm of daily life. For what use is illumination if it remains locked in the high places of thought, untouched by the heartbeat of experience? The name, the frequency, the cosmic utterance that reorders the code of your being, is not reserved solely for meditation halls or scriptural texts. It longs to live in your breath, to color the choices you make, to shape how you speak to yourself in the quiet hours of morning and how you meet the gaze of the world. To carry the name within is to carry a living resonance. It is less a thing to say than a state to enter. And this state, this inner tuning, is where transformation ceases to be a philosophical idea and becomes an embodied frequency. One of the greatest truths hidden in plain sight is that your body listens more deeply than your mind. Each word you speak vibrates through tissue, bone, and cell. Each emotion hums its own note through your nervous system. And the name, when invoked not just through syllables but through intention, becomes a stabilizing axis around which your biology reharmonizes. You begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with attunement. You become less reactive, not because you have forced yourself into stillness, but because the chaos no longer finds an echo inside you. The noise of the world passes through, unable to distort what is anchored in a higher tone. This is the beginning of vibrational sovereignty, not separation from the world, but transcendence within it. In practical terms, the ancient mystics were not prescribing escape. They were offering tools to awaken your architecture of light. They understood breath as a carrier wave posture, as a vessel's silence as a teacher. Even simple acts, chanting sacred syllables, holding intention while drinking water, listening deeply to inner stillness, become technologies of alignment. They are not rituals of superstition, but calibrations. You are not calling upon a god outside yourself. You are remembering the sacred algorithm encoded into the marrow of your being. One of the most immediate shifts that occurs when one begins to resonate with the divine frequency is a change in perceptual depth. Reality no longer feels two-dimensional. Conversations carry unseen layers. Moments that once seemed mundane begin to shimmer with synchronicity. You realize that life is not something happening to you, but something that is humming through you, responding to your frequency like a field of mirrors. And when your frequency matches the tone of the name of I Am, of pure being, then the mirrors no longer distort. They reflect the divine. From a biological lens, this translates as coherence. Heart rate variability improves. Stress chemistry decreases. Cognitive clarity rises. You are no longer stuck in the looping patterns of fear or reactivity that once shaped your nervous system. Instead, your biology begins to entrain to a more refined signal, one that is ancient, one that is familiar, one that reawakens not just health, but remembrance. There are, of course, challenges. The old patterns do not leave quietly. As your frequency shifts, you may notice relationships, habits, and even long-held beliefs beginning to fall away. Not because they are wrong, but because they no longer resonate. The shedding can feel like loss, but in truth, it is resonance doing its sacred work. Only what matches your new tone can remain. The rest drifts like ash on wind, clearing space for what is real. This is not a solitary path. While the name may be remembered in solitude, its effects ripple outward. People sense the shift in you. Without knowing why, they listen more deeply. Conflicts resolve more easily. You find yourself speaking less, but saying more. The divine frequency doesn't speak to the ego in others, it awakens the soul. and the soul recognizes its kin. Even mundane tasks begin to shift. Eating becomes an act of devotion, not through dogma, but through presence. Work transforms from effort into expression. You are not trying to prove anything anymore. You are simply radiating what you've remembered. And that radiation is the gift. Your DNA, now resonating with the name, becomes a transmitter. You no longer just receive the divine code, you become a living signal of it. This is the essence of sacred activism. Not protest, not persuasion, but presence. The more you harmonize with the name, the more your being becomes a field of coherence. And coherence is contagious. Others begin to feel what words cannot explain. Your existence becomes an invitation, not to follow you, but to remember themselves. Perhaps the most powerful implication is this: transformation is not about becoming something new, but about returning to what you've always been beneath the distortion. You are not broken. You are not missing pieces. You are simply detuned. And the frequency of the name, the true one, felt not heard, retunes you to the divine symphony. This is not a metaphor. This is not a theory. This is the actual architecture of reality. And you are a strand of that architecture being tuned again to sing the ancient song. So, here we are on the other side of the veil. Not in a different place, not in some far-off celestial domain, but right here in this very moment, which now pulses with more dimension, more resonance, more presence than ever before. We have traveled through the idea, the myth, the metaphor, and now we arrive not at an ending, but at a threshold, the point where knowledge must become embodiment, where memory must become movement, and where the sacred name must no longer be spoken, but lived. In the beginning, you may have seen this as an esoteric claim that the ancient name of God carries a frequency that changes your DNA. But now, having walked through layers of symbol, of sound, of soul, you realize this isn't just metaphor and it isn't just mysticism. It's the deep science of spirit, the ancient cosmology of vibration, the remembering of the divine blueprint etched into every cell, every strand, every silence between your thoughts. For too long, the name has been locked away behind fear, superstition, mistranslation. Whispered by mystics, guarded by priests, chanted by seekers who felt something stirring deep within but could not fully articulate its fire. Now, however, the world trembles on the cusp of reactivation. The veil thins not just in sacred sites or ancient texts, but in you, in your breath, in your willingness to hear what can no longer be denied. The name is not a word. It is a tone, a carrier wave, a pattern of divine memory that rides upon your breath like a spark across dry leaves. It is the I am before language, the awareness before form. And when you allow that frequency to take residence within you, not as doctrine, not as chant, but as felt reality, then the great reordering begins. This transformation is not loud. It is not broadcast through lightning or trumpets. It arrives like light does, silently, completely, without asking permission. First, you feel more like yourself than ever before, but that self is not the one others have known. It is the one beneath the layers, the one who doesn't need to speak to be heard, the one who doesn't need to control because it is the still point behind all motion. You may weep not from sadness but from recognition, from remembering, because once the name moves through you, something ancient in you lifts its head and smiles. You realize you've known this all along. You've always been walking home. In this remembering, life changes not just because you now know something different, but because you are something different. You become more luminous, more stable, more compassionate, not through effort, but through coherence. You stop reacting to shadows and start responding to light. And you start to notice others waking up around you too, not always with words, but with subtle shifts. Their breath deepens around you. Their gaze lingers. Their stories soften. This is what it means to be a transmitter of the divine frequency. This is what it means to carry the name not as a word, but as a resonance of being. There will be days when the world tries to pull you back into the old frequency of fear, of separation, of scarcity. And in those moments, remember this: the name cannot be lost. It cannot be broken. You do not need to search for it again. You need only remember and realign. It is always humming beneath the static. It is the hum of your eternal self. and your breath is the doorway back. You are not becoming something greater. You are unmasking what was always holy. Every act of kindness, every stillness you hold in chaos, every word you speak from truth, it becomes an extension of the divine frequency, echoing the primal name in a world starving to hear it. So now we return to the beginning, not in ignorance, but in reverence. We return to the breath, the body, the life we live every day, but now with the knowing that each of these is encoded with God's original signal. The name is not something to escape into. It is something to bring with you into work, into family, into art, into love, into silence, into every part of life that aches for harmony. If you've read this far, then perhaps you already carry the spark. Perhaps you have always been listening for this note beneath the noise. And now that you've found it, it's time to remember who you are. Time to stop waiting. Time to start living from the frequency you were born for. In the end, the ancient name of God is not a sound to be worshipped, it is a frequency to be lived. And as you live it, you become the reactivation of divine memory on earth. You become the echo of the eternal. You become the light that remembers itself. You are the name spoken into form. You are the resonance that realigns the world. You are the code returned to coherence. You are the living prayer. And now the question is not, have you heard the name? But rather, will you become it? If something deep within you stirred during this experience, a memory, a vibration, a feeling you can't quite put into words, know this, it wasn't random. It was a calling, a return, a remembering, to the part of you that has always known where the ancient name of God still resonates in silence. Mystic Vault isn't just a YouTube channel. It's a gateway. Each video is a key that unlocks deeper levels of reality, where ancient wisdom meets modern consciousness, where divine frequencies reach into your very DNA and awaken something miraculous within you. If you felt something shift while hearing about the ancient name of God that changes your DNA, share it in the comments. Let your voice be heard. Let others know they are not alone in this remembering. And if you're seeking truths that can't be explained through ordinary words or logic, then subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and step fully into this journey of awakening. You are invited to be part of something greater. Join us in the Mystic Vault, where ancient light is being unveiled piece by piece for those who are ready. Subscribe now, leave a meaningful comment, and remember, you're not just watching this video. You're awakening to who you truly are.